welcome to the second in a series of EUHOFA seminars that we've been running. And this, as you well know, is about bridging the divide between the hospitality industry and education. I'm going to start with a presentation shortly, but the people that you see on your screen in front of you are our panelists. So we have from left to right, Stuart Wiggin, Lisa Wild, Regina Santa Maria, Moham Kumar, and Gavin Fall. You'll see their roles in just a minute when I start the presentation. So if I may, we're going to start straight away by moving on to the presentation. There are still some people coming in, but we need to. Right. Our panel for today, we have Gavin Fall, who's the chairman and president, Swiss Bell International and Zest Hotels International. He's currently in Sydney, but actually is a resident of New Zealand. PK Moham Kumar, founder and CEO, Turnstone Hospitality in India. Regina Santa Maria, executive manager of hospitality at Michael Page in Spain. Lisa Wild, head Missenden Abbey International Hotel and Hospitality School in Buckinghamshire. She's at Buckinghamshire New University, something I always get wrong. And Stuart Wiggins, who's the Pro Vice Chancellor at the International College of Management in Sydney. Myself, from EUHOFA, the moderator, and my colleague, Ursula Boardman, who's keeping a close eye on the chat, letting people in, who's also working with me as a moderator. So the format for the webinar is a short presentation based on a recent eHotelier survey that we've been carrying out, a round table discussion on the key issues. If you wish to ask a question or post a comment, please do that using the chat and the question function, and then we'll move on to the next steps. But the first question is, are there barriers to developing relationships? The first question we asked in the survey, and you can see there that there's an overwhelming response that there are barriers between industry and education to developing closer, more meaningful relationships. And I'm also using a lot of the comments which came out during the course of the survey to illustrate some of the points that either industry or education are making. And you'll see as we go through that these are little post-its which keep appearing, and they're in different colors. And the colors represent the industry and education. But I think it's common from both sides that they felt it was a challenge to get education and industry to cooperate and work much closer together. So the key themes that emerge from the eHotelier survey, and bearing in mind the results are comparing industry views and education views, and the percentages you see were the respondents' percentages to the survey altogether. And you can see from those responses that there is a gap. There's a belief on both sides, there's a strong gap, that the gap has got bigger, that education and training is not good at preparing students for industry, and that education and training will have to change radically to keep pace with the changes that are currently taking place in industry. What's interesting about the data from the survey is the strong commonality that we're beginning to find, the congruence of views between industry and education. And that in itself is quite fascinating. And we'll try and explore some of that as we go through. So here are some of the views from industry. There is a common theme that comes out through most of the comments, which are about criticism, if you like, of education, in that they do things in a particular way and they're very slow at changing, and there needs to be improved communications. And you can see that from the education responses as well. Education is slow to change and update. It's too slow for the industry. Many academics are not interested. They don't need to be, because their career track is more to do with academics and theory than it is to do with the professional practice, if you like. And I think the bottom one is particularly interesting, with this idea of what might be something for the future. This idea of shared ambition, co-ownership, shared responsibilities and mutual investments to help to bridge the gap, which could be a different model than the ones that we're using at the moment. So what is it about these industry education relationships? One of the questions we asked was to try and get some sense of understanding about what activities do industry and education engage in where they come together. What I thought was particularly important and relevant here is that advisory boards are often stated by education in particular as being, that's the way we talk to industry. And yet over the last year, even in education, a third of education had an advisory board that engaged with industry. So we might be good at talking the talk and saying, yes, we are always consulting with industry. The reality is it doesn't seem to be happening, because the industry are not engaged with it and education is not really engaged with that. So it's more interesting that they get probably more benefit from informal discussions rather than a formal structural way of making things happen. And these are some of the comments. People ask for advice, but you never see what happens to it. And the other is that a limited number of industry people are prepared to engage. Well, that may be because there are a whole raft of things they're saying, well, should I really devote my time to this? If they don't take any notice of me, what's the point? So there's some big issues around in this. How well does the education prepare people for the industry? A fairly classic question, I suppose, but I tried to frame them so it was more about professional realities rather than skills. And as you would have expected, industry says not very well, although education would say, well, we don't do a bad job, but we don't do a brilliant job. I thought the comment from education was interesting, in that academics particularly, and their institutions, are dream sellers. They don't prepare people for the reality. And then clearly, is there a sufficient emphasis on developing professional skills in the industry culture? And I think both parties, you'll see the commonality there in terms of the responses, that they say there's insufficient evidence, insufficient emphasis. But the comment there is, which I think most people would recognize, is that there is a real challenge in vocational education, which might not be seen as being an attractive educational pathway. So what was the relationship of professional skills and knowledge? Well, students are better at theory than practice. And there is a strong agreement and an agreement there that they are a lot better at theory than they are at practice. And as you can see there from that data, really, and it doesn't seem to matter whether it's industry or education, although percentages vary slightly. But there is a view that they're better at theory and practice. That of course would be because they probably get more theory than they do practice. And the other issue, which I thought was really interesting, is to try and tease out, is there this integrated understanding of theory and practice? Is there anything that meshes it together? Is there anything that makes it a whole and makes it a reality? And again, there's a real fairly strong commonality there. There's a disagreement with that statement. They do not have a well-integrated understanding of both theory and practice. And that really, both are actually saying the same sort of thing, but in a slightly different way. And we then went on to try and find out a little bit more about that. Because one of the things that everybody argues is that placements and internships are where that theory and practice should come together. So we asked the questions about what type of internship or placement should there be. And the overall response, as you'll see there, is they should be compulsory and up to 12 months. Or up 6 months. I think that would depend on what type of school that you were operating within. But then, does your organization provide internships and placement? A lot of industry say, yes, we do. So we're doing that. Education, and bearing in mind this survey was international, yes, 2/3 say we do have compulsory placements. Of that, many of them were up to 6 months, not 12, but I haven't bothered to do that in this presentation. But the figure that's really stuck out to me was that 1/3 of education only provide placements on an optional basis. So there's nothing compulsory or mandatory about that. So yes, almost a conflict here between education saying, yes, they should be, 60% say they should be compulsory up to 12 months, and yet their institutions, 1/3 of their institutions are saying, well, students can do them if they like, but we're not making them compulsory. So again, conflicting views there, but the statement is that where that theory and practice should come together is not being made available to all students. So when recruiting students or graduates, what are your preferences? This was designed purely for industry. And oh, whoops, Daisy, let me go back, see if I can find that again. Hang on, sorry. All right, no, I'm going to carry on because the whole thing's got a mind of its own. What we found in that was that from that particular point was that industry prefer to recruit hospitality graduates, and they would prefer hospitality graduates who've got a strong professional focus within their curriculum. These are just some of the comments on the recommendations, what would make it better or what better prepare students for the world of work. And there is a very rich vein of commentary coming out, both from industry and education, that really are, I think, their own personal views, but nevertheless, there's an awful lot there, which I think we need to take note of. That are really reflective of some of the thinking that's taking place in people in industry, and interestingly also reflective of those in education. But as you'll see here in the educational ones, that what's happening there is that they may feel frustrated within their own organization that they're not able to do the things that they would ideally like to do. But regular exposure to industry, industry-friendly curriculum, cooperation, more working hours to training, practice, integrated work-based learning, hybrid programs on the job, all sorts of things which in many ways have some synergy with what industry's views are, but they're coming at them from a particular educational standpoint. I think the last one, walk the talk, deliver what you promise and more, is interesting. I think there's a view from some in education that they might be talking, but they're not walking the talk. Okay. So I just tried to summarize some of these in just 2 particular comments. And I think these 2 comments for me really summarize where the issues are that we need to address from both an industry and an education point of view. And the education view, a curriculum based on hospitality of the future, and from education, almost a plea from the heart that we need more flexibility to be able to do that. So I think they feel, and this is true in a number of education comments, that they feel that their institution is not helping them to listen or to be able to carry out, if you like, or change things sufficiently to recognize what industry is really looking for. So we're now going to explore a number of questions. These are the questions. What can we do to try and bridge that divide? There is a real agreement that what we're doing at the moment from an educational point of view is not doing a good job, it's not preparing students well for the industry. But the other issue that kept coming up in terms of some of that commentary is that the industry is moving so rapidly, how can education and training keep pace with what those changes are? And I'm going to ask all of our panelists to give us a takeaway to offer to whether you're in industry or education, what small thing can you do that would help to improve? So I'm going to stop the share screen at this point, and we're going to start. So we know what the first question is, and as I said earlier, my colleague Ursula is monitoring the chat, so if you've got any specific comments or questions, please can you put them in the chat, and then we may have the opportunity to address those. But starting off, there is a gap. Everybody recognizes a gap. What can the different sides do? So we have Gavin representing his own industry. We have Mohan Kumar representing the industry and Regina. And we have, if you like, 2.5 educators. So we've got Stuart and Lisa, and I'll put my hand up as being half an educator. Right, I'm going to start with education, Stuart, and then move on and ask probably Gavin to comment on that first issue. We know there's a divide. It's getting pretty big. What, from an education point of view, do you believe we could do to actually narrow the gap and improve the relationships? He's done it again, Stuart.
It's best if I unmute myself, but thank you, Peter, and good evening, everybody from Sydney. Look, I think we've touched upon some things already which are key to this. And personally, I don't believe from an Australian perspective that our collaboration with industry is what it needs to be to bridge the gap. We are very much driven by regulatory processes, and we're happy to engage with the industry when we need them to come and evidence that we've spoken to them about a re-accreditation process or a new course accreditation. And then once that's over, the gap starts to build again. And there's something else here that evidences that really we don't listen to them when they have spoken, and that's when you look at the curricula in Australia and how that's changed. And I did some comparison between what the tourism, hospitality and events curricula look like in Australia. I picked up some work from Day and her collaborators in 2012, and I used the same methodology to analyse the curricula in 2021. And what it showed was that the curricula in Australia had actually gone backwards in terms of tourism, hospitality and event management specific content across the 3 years of the bachelor degrees. And in the first year, even though there was 27% of the subjects in first year curricula across those bachelor degrees were tourism, hospitality and events, 45% were business. And the fastest growing subject across those curricula were electives. So how that mix is properly preparing our students to be welcomed by industry and to show that they are ready to go, to engage with the industry, to engage with our customers. Because don't forget, if from an Australian perspective, the industry wants our students from day one. Yeah. They want them in first year. And really, if I was to, if I had my way, I would be driving the core capabilities that make somebody employable in hospitality. I would be driving those home from day one. The first year of the curriculum is the most important, because that's when the industry gets to engage with our students. So we as educators need to be backing that up and preparing those students for that first engagement. Yeah. So yeah. That then would build trust, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I think your observations in terms of what's happening in Australia, I think will be mirrored. Lisa will sure have an opportunity to comment on that as well. But we're seeing the same sort of thing, pretty much all over the world, really. And that's the part of the problem, is that and as one of the comments said, the curriculum is not really fit for purpose in terms of the professional development that the individual needs to become employable. Mohan Kumar.
Yeah. Good evening to all of you. Thank you, Peter, for bringing, for the invitation and interesting observations by Stuart. I, of course, would take up for the operations, the industry, because I'm celebrating my 50th year in the industry. I've been with the Tata Taj Group for 41 years, right from a management trainee and up to the CEO level. However, the perspectives are different. I'll talk from an Indian perspective. The industry, as you know, India today is actually at its best in terms of economic development, which also means the hospitality is fully recovered. In fact, it's not thriving; it's actually just prospering. However, post-COVID, the industry has also learned to be a little more smart and going for cost optimization. So they actually sort of reduce their staff ratio from 1:3 to 4 to now 1:2. We also have a problem, which is a perception that the industry is not a big pay master. However, in terms of long hours, so therefore, in terms of a work-life balance, the Indian hospitality industry is not viewed by the millennial, the current millennial, to be a very prospective employer from a perspective of work-life balance. And also in terms of, but however, there is still a lot of glamour for those who chose the culinary art, the chefs, because it's a very aspirational society here in India. So having said that, let me just specifically say, what is this gap between industry and the hotel management institutes in India? Number one, billable, employable. So like after a 3-year hotel management graduates who are actually picked up after their +2, that means they get into an intermediate university and then they actually become professional program, which in itself actually it's a big challenge because basically they're too young to in fact imbibe a whole lot of things that are actually taught in a 3-year professional program. And there is this misconception that the hospitality industry worldwide is actually very much like the film industry, very glamorous. There's a lot of glitz and blitz about hospitality industry. So therefore, these young aspirants, students and the parents who actually sort of opt out for hotel management, and the word management in itself is a misnomer. Because basically in the first year, you have to be thorough in your skills. You have to be pretty adept in being a good steward or being a good commie or being a good housekeeper, because you are entering the industry at the supervisory level. And when you enter the industry at the supervisory level at a young age of 21, you have a whole lot of employees who have finished their lifetime, 20 years, 10 years, 30 years in the industry, and they're pretty adept at what they're doing. And here you come in as a floor housekeeper or a banquet supervisor, captain, or a commie chef de partie, and then tell them, listen, this is the theoretical way of making, poulet sauté a la king. They're going to say, listen, that's only in the theory book. In the reality, when you have to cook for 100 persons, it's a very different ball game.
Yeah.
So then there is this huge, frustration that happens in those guys who have just been on board for a fanciful brand like the Taj, and then they realize that it takes a lot of time for being accepted at the shop floor level, not necessarily at the executive chef level or the F&B manager level. They know because they come from the same background. So therefore, there is this indoctrination phase that goes through among the students.
Yeah, that's
the
an interesting
students. Yeah,
Go on.
the third-year students who are actually now the prima donna of a catering college, in overnight become the junior most in a hotel. They become trainees. That itself is actually a very psychological, battle that they have to go through. That suddenly from a college where they are seniors and they think that they know all the stuff, get into a hotel school, and their own seniors who are in the college become their bosses, seniors, right? And then they turn around and say, listen, how come that you don't know how to make a buffet table?
Yeah.
They never done it in the catering college. How to do a buffet table within a certain, or turn around a banquet hall.
Yeah, can I just interrupt there? Because I think you've hit on one or two interesting points. Is that the nature of the experience that you would get in the college is no way is that replicated or replicating what takes place in the industry. The other issue, which is a very well very well voiced one, is the issue about what happens with these people because they have an expectation that they're going to be holding down a particular job, but they don't have the skill sets to do it. So that would also argue that perhaps the closer and the earlier one can get that relationship with industry, then obviously that's a way of overcoming it. Gavin, what's your thoughts on this?
I am having a problem.
No, you're okay. We can hear you.
Right, you can hear me and see me.
Yeah, we can hear you and see you.
Because I've had other calls coming in. Education is a really tricky business, and it's changing so fast, you know, with the skill sets. But hospitality has its real challenges. We are by far the fastest growing employer in the world. And in fact, we're probably the only industry where employee numbers are growing exponentially compared to everything else, which we're doing, which is sort of contracting. And of course, with the way technology is going, it's unbelievable. However, there's a lot of attitude changes, and COVID has really blown us apart. And you know, I have to talk about work-life balance with my vice presidents, which I've never had to do before. But one of the things I feel is that when they leave hotel school, Peter, and there's no real retraining process. You know, I'm a member of a number of different institutions, from being a CPA to board directors and what have you, and I have to pass examinations every 2 or 3 years to keep updating me. I don't think our industry does that, and that's probably one of the key things to our divide. Is that you know, when you graduate, you're only starting to learn. And I have, you know, training programs through my 12,000 staff, but it's hard to motivate the real training. And it's interesting, I get real training take up in Indonesia and Kenya, whereas in Australia and New Zealand, they think they're fully qualified.
Yeah, I think that you've hit on a very interesting point there, Gavin, that you know, there is a view that when I finish, I've got my degree, you can't teach me anything, guys. I'm fully qualified. I know what it is all about. And this notion that you've just raised, really, the whole one about professional development, the need to be aware and keep aware. Now that would apply to both people working in the industry, but also those in education. Because we argue that you know, academics should continue with their development, and they're supposed to, but half the time they'll go to a conference that probably has got nothing to do with what the hell they're talking about, really. But you know, I just put a tick in a box because I've been to another conference.
Yeah, and you know, I go to lots of conferences, Peter, and gotta be careful how I say this, but you don't seem to learn much, do you?
Not necessarily, no. There's a huge difference. Yeah. I mean, I think that's right. Could I just move on and get Regina's views on that? Because I think we've raised a number of things now in terms of students coming out from the industry, coming into the industry thinking that they know it all. They're not well prepared for that. What's your take on that and the idea that we need to keep them on board somehow and they recognize that the journey's beginning rather than they've come to the end of it?
Totally. Actually, I'm really agree with Mohammed Kumar was explaining that I think that the big gap, and seeing it from a middle point, I'm not from the education and I'm not really internally from the industry. I'm in the middle. No, I search for the best employees for the industry, and saying that I'm looking for the best students. And what I really see when I interview mainly the middle management, they go out of the school no one is studying to be a waiter or to be a commie or to be a chef. All of them are studying to be general managers or CEOs. So all of them want to be as it's normal, but they think that they finish the education, they finish their degree, and they are ready to do everything. That they do an internship that goes for 6 months, a little bit in each department, and they are ready to be the general manager for one hotel. And I think that here is the gap, that we teach the theory, they are good in the theory, then we send them in the industry, we say, okay, you will be doing a program management in hotel, you will see a little bit of each department, and you will be a shadow of a general manager, so you will be giving orders, you will be managing people that have a lot of more experience than you in each department, but you will manage them, and then they think that they are ready. And they are really lack of experience to be a proper manager. So I think that the industry and education will have to talk to do specific programs to train the people. This is one point. And then the other point that I see is that we teach them like the dream job and the dream industry, as Mohammed Kumar was saying, is like everything is luxurious, everything is so nice in the hospitality industry, everything is about 5-star hotels, international brands, very nice. But our industry, it have a lot of diversity. We have international brands, we have local brands, we have small hotels, we have big hotels, we have properties that have only one hotels, and each hotel or each business in this industry have their own reality. So I think that the students needs to see all these realities. It's not enough to do one training program in one hotel and then you know everything. So from the education, it have to show the all reality and all the diversity that is in the industry to be well prepared and decide what you want to do and decide if you are prepared for it.
That's an interesting point, because you've got such a rich diversity of the industry that I think there is certainly in some areas and in some schools I'm very aware of that their focus is in one luxury end brand and so on, and yet you can get as much satisfaction actually being in a small independent operator, and many of them might want to become owner operators for themselves because that's how big ones start.
And sorry, Peter, I think another gap is that sometimes, maybe it's not good to say that, but I'm in the middle. I can say that. For example, internships is like a mandatory thing for the education. Is like, wow, we are offering our students to do an internship, so it's good because they will be in the practice, they will see the reality. And internship is like something mandatory for the students in the companies. It's like, okay, we will have people doing internship, but at the end of the day, they are not teaching them. When you have a trainee in the industry, in the hotel, normally, or at least what I see, is they work as a normal employee. They are not really, there are some companies that, yes, they have amazing internship programs, but I will say that maybe 80%, the trainees or the ones that are doing the internships, they are working. So they do the internship in the reception. They work as a receptionist. They are doing the internship in the kitchen. They work like a chef. So they learn because they face the problems, but no because someone is really teaching them. And I think that this is a real gap on the education when it passed to the industry.
You raise again another very interesting point, because many of the internships students find for themselves. And so, the institution doesn't necessarily find the internship. So again, you can't guarantee the nature of the training provision that may be available to the student. So you're right. And I mean, it's happened to probably most of us at some stage where you just go in and you just do the job. I mean, I would refer to that as, providing they go in with the right frame of mind and they're learning from the experiences and asking questions about it and being curious, they can get an awful lot out of that experience. But it is better if it's managed in some way and there is some sort of guidance and training that's going on to benefit them in that regard. But that doesn't always happen. Lisa, what's your take on things?
Okay, I suppose I completely agree with what everybody has been saying. I think from a UK point of view, a lot of what we do is extremely dated. We haven't moved with the time, shall we say. We have a limited number of practice-based degrees, shall we say, within the UK. Some research that I was fortunate to be commissioned to do a little while ago also found that some of our universities in the UK have not changed their curriculum for 8 to 10 years, which is very worrying because the world has definitely moved on within that time. I think from our, and only slightly. And I think there is the whole thing with the link between industry and what we do in education is so important. But I also feel that a lot of academics cannot be bothered with it because of the amount of time that is, and it's easier to be able to draw out those same slides that you've done for years and years and years and just rehash it and everything else. I also think from a UK point of view, we don't have the practical environments within our institutions to be able to bring those performance-based assessments and performance-based knowledge as well. And I also think that unfortunately, from our side, the UK education system is quite slow. Universities can be quite bureaucratic, shall we say, in their processes to be able to get things to change. The industry is moving greatly and changes are happening at a lightning speed. But we're told by institutions that we need at least an 18 to 24 month lead time to be able to launch anything new or to be able to make changes and everything else. And that just doesn't work. I mean, I'm very fortunate in the institution that I'm in and that I am a brand new hospitality and hotel school. So being able to do something quite different and having very much that industry centric education. And that's what's needed. Industry needs to be involved in every module we deliver. And that can be in a variety of different ways. Students need to have that practical based experience in internships in that practical environment. I completely agree with Regina. We do have a problem though with some internship providers that they're just seen as being an extra pair of hands and everything else. There's been some absolute horror stories from students when they've come back and they've had to make cups of tea for the general manager. They've had to go and collect his dry cleaning and all manner of other things because it's just seen in that way. Internships and placements, they need to be structured. There needs to be clear learning outcomes of actually what are the students going to achieve by it, and that needs to be that agreement between the student, us as academics, and also then the placement and internship providers. And I think that bit is some of the links that are missing because some of them are getting that practical experience, but is it actually valuable practical experience? And I think the last thing for me is the naming conventions of our degrees is part of the problem, I think, with students coming out thinking, oh, we're managers now because I've done a management degree. There is that whole idea. We're not going to call it hospitality studies or something like that because I think hospitality management, hospitality leadership is what we're aspiring for them to have those skills and that knowledge. But I think there is that misconception. I've studied a management degree, so therefore, of course, I'm going to get a management role as soon as I step out the door.
Yeah, and of course, it's not helped in the UK and elsewhere by many of the hospitality provision, if you like, now sitting under business schools. So they're all business-related degrees of one kind or another. I just quickly mentioned that I was involved with in Nepal with developing a new bachelor's program for them, which is a different model altogether, which is called the Bachelor of Professional Hospitality. There is no management in there anywhere, and it's about being a professional hospitality. It's not about ending up with a management degree of some kind. Right.
That professional practice is so important.
It's so important to bring them together. Let's go back to Stuart, can I? Because I think there is an issue there about how do we improve the communication between industry and education, because we've identified a lot of the problems and where the gaps might be, but how can we improve that communication? And Stuart's done a lot of work on that. I think he's even got a badge for it somewhere, didn't you? You get a badge for improving your relationships or communication with industry?
Oh, I think that badge was maybe one that we've ourselves turned into a badge.
Oh, right, okay.
We were finalists in the Australian Financial Review Higher Education Awards for employability this year. So we've been using that logo as a badge everywhere. So thanks for mentioning it though, Peter.
Right, that's fine.
Can I just backtrack for a minute? Because when you were presenting the slides, there was one that I found really interesting. And for me, there are so many different levels different avenues that we can go down in this conversation. But I think that there was one slide where you showed the top 5 recommendations from industry as to how we can move forwards and improve things. And what that slide spoke to for me were the core elements of what makes hospitality, the profession, and the arts that we all know and recognize it to be. And it speaks to the expertise with people and the expertise in providing customer experiences. And what made it even more interesting for me was that when I read the recommendations from industry, there was almost 100% alignment with what I found in my research for my thesis. And that led me to 6 core capabilities that industry looks for in new employees, which essentially are the ones that they look for in our students. And I do wonder whether if we go back to basics and get those basics right, then we will have improved relationships with all of our stakeholders. The students that come to us for a career, the industry partners who employ our students, and also if we're doing that and we've got happy stakeholders, then our other main stakeholder in Australia, the government and the regulator, also look upon us in a better light, because they assess us on student feedback, they assess us on student employment rates, and so on. And if we focus on those core elements a little bit more, and it does relate, yes, we have gone down the path of the business school model for financial reasons. And basically, because if you're a private provider in Australia and you want to get your programs accredited, you copy what the universities are doing. And that means that you're pretty much going to present a business degree to the regulator to facilitate accreditation, which then doesn't serve you in the long term. But I do think there's an opportunity as private providers become more confident, then we will be in a position to present curricula that our industry that will serve our industry better. And this for me is key. We're trying all sorts of things. We spoke about professional development. Gavin spoke about it, and Mo and Kumar. At ICMS, we've launched a professional development lab with the intention of offering products that industry and our alumni will want to help them grow into their careers or to bring their staff to ICMS, so that we can help that continuous professional development piece. And also we're interested in looking at a professional development model within the student experience at the college. So the different stages that they can expect to reach in their employment while they're going through their education. Because from my perspective, the perfect model is that, let's take a 3-year bachelor degree at ICMS, that a student should be working across those 3 years. An internship, yes, is a great thing and is important, but that will be at 1 or 2 moments in time within the curriculum, but we want them to be working all the way through, so that it's like the spiral curriculum model, where work and study work together to maximize the outcomes.
There are a number of models around for that as well, including hybrid models as well, aren't there? And sort of work-based learning models. But of course, the problem that we face from an educational point of view is often they're really hard to get people to understand and actually to accept as being of an appropriate level and standard. But can I go back to my question about communication? Gavin, can we look at what would you be looking at from your point of view within your own organization? How do you work on improving communication with education?
With a huge difficulty.
I thought you might say that.
And I think the hotel schools need to try and have a way to force themselves out into the education game. But you know, I have a GM's conference every year, and I've just cancelled it this week, and I'm going to have a GM workshop on a regional basis, so they actually sit down and learn and participate in something. But it gets more and more complicated. You know, I have to handle the mental stress problem. It's a huge issue because it's been marketed to us by all our governments that we all have mental stress and are having nervous breakdowns. And I brought in a renowned mental health person, and I still didn't get it across. So it's very tricky. And then you got I'm a New Zealander, so I'm not going to say these things about Australia. Australia just passed a law today, Peter, you'd be interested in, that I can't talk to my management after 5 o'clock or ring them up or send them SMSs. That's illegal.
Oh, really? Well, you always did flout regulation anyway, Gavin, so I'm sure you'll find a way around it.
Well, you know, 24/7, yes, I just change the watches.
Yeah, exactly.
So of course, I think it there has to be some accreditation process somehow. I don't know.
Yeah, actually, I think you've hit on something there, because there is well, let's just go back to the communication, and I'll come back to that if I may. Mohammed Kumar, what do you think that industry and education should do to improve communication?
Okay. Thank you. Prior to that, I just want to share a thought of mine. You know, there's a word called symbiotic relationship, which is very often used between, let's say, engineering industry and engineering colleges, medical colleges and hospitals. You know, it has to be, therefore, we don't have a symbiotic relationship in the true meaning of academics and the industry.
Yeah, that's
one. Secondly, before I come to the communication part, just also want to say there's something called, in India, we practice now, ask, A-S-K. You know, it's very important. This is a service, this is a very tough industry. Hospitality industry is not as glamorous and as dreamy as the college makes out the students to believe. It's a very tough industry. Therefore, attitude is all about this industry. So that's A. S is skill and K is knowledge. So by the time this student is in the second year, you know, where actually you can take a decision, she can take a decision whether to continue or not, there has to be an assessment of ask among all the students. Are they really, you know, suitable for the hospitality industry or any other allied industries? Today, the colleges are turning out students not for the hospitality industry at all in India. Most of them prefer to go to banks and airlines and a whole lot of places because of the work-life balance. Nobody wants to do this late night shifts, graveyard shifts, and a whole lot of things, you know. So that's the one aspect I want to share before I come out to the communication skills. Communication is it's everything in the hospitality industry. It's all about communication. Number one, first of all, there is no subject that's taught in the college hotel management syllabus about how to actually become articulate. How do, you know, speaking skills, writing skills, business correspondence skills, you know, whole lot of things from word go. Because it's all about how you communicate right from the time you step into a hotel, you know, whether it's communicating about various stakeholders. Also, remember a young graduate. Just imagine working in a specialty restaurant or in a VIP banquet function and coming across the chairman of a company who probably would not be able to differentiate between this student and a normal steward or a service staff. And imagine the gap, how a student has to address this corporate giant who's seen it all, who's traveled all over the world, and he's seen to hotels. So, you know, how do these students sort of have the maturity, the ability, the confidence to talk to guests? Because the guests who come to hotels are achievers. They are the who's who. So how do you interact? How do you communicate? And it's all about like selling skills. How do you sell? You sell only if you have the ability to convince the consumer, the customer, to buy something more expensive. Whether it's upskilling, upgrading a room or this thing. So then the other aspect is right level of communication. It's also about protocol in communication. Whether it's actually with the team, or whether with your seniors, or whether with the community, or whether with the media, for instance. None of this is actually taught in a college. For someone like me, for instance, I went on to become a food and beverage director and general manager. At the level of GM, there are so many occasions when you have to speak in public. Where is it taught in terms of an academic knowledge?
I think part of that is about developing the confidence of the students to be able to do that engagement. And that's probably a different webinar altogether, quite frankly. But you're absolutely right. It's about how do you engender that in the student experience to be able so that they can take that role in the industry. But I'll come back, Regina, because you spend time in the middle. You're part of that meat in the sandwich, aren't you, between the two? How would you see that, though you could work, or what advice would you give both parts of your sandwich to help them to communicate better with each other?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Look,
my apologies, yeah.
If you want to say something, yeah.
No, go ahead.
The C-level people in the industry, it's coming from the education in the industry. So in one point, they lose this communication. So something have to be done to maintain this community. Look, I'm coming from hospitality background family, but I studied business. And we have this alumni, which is very, very active. I move it around the world. I live it in Spain, I live it in Dubai, I live it in Singapore. And without telling to my university, they follow me. And they were like inviting me in events in different countries. So from one side, education maybe have to be strong in their alumni. I know I'm talking without the knowledge. I'm not inside the industry, I'm not inside the education, so maybe it's so difficult. Just some ideas that came to me that in one point, this communication broke, and come on, the directors from the industry are coming from the education. So we have to achieve that this communication that this gap doesn't happen, because something happen in one point that they lose these roots with their schools or with their students. So from one side, from the education, to make it the alumni associations stronger and more active. And from the other side, we were saying internships. The students have to look for their honest internships mainly in all the schools. So why let's not do partnerships with few companies, not all of them, and tell the students, look, your internships will be in these companies. Then you can go anywhere in the world, any kind of company, but let's work with 5, 10, 15, the quantity that each student can, and make the programs specifically with these companies and try to be in communication with them to improve. Then the students can go outside, but we cannot control it's a huge industry, and it's a worldwide industry. So we cannot pretend to have a good communication with all the countries, with all the schools worldwide in all the levels. So let's start for what we can control in small portions, and then let them to go out.
Yep, you're up. Yeah, you made, again, everybody's making such valid points today. But one of the things that I still get, and Gavin will know this because he was one of my directors when I was running the Blue Mountains Hotel Schools. I get every day, I'm getting something either on Facebook or on LinkedIn or whatever from one of those graduates, from one of those alumni that actually maintain that very strong network together. And that is a really powerful thing, because they're in industry positions, and they are very collective, if you like. They want to belong. It's a club that they really want to belong to, and that can work extremely powerfully. But Lisa, you're starting a brand new operation, so you've got opportunities for these things. But how are you working to try and make sure that what you're doing actually resonates with industry and you've got those good communication links?
Yeah, for me, it's all about building up those partnerships, and the partnerships with industry have been the complete focal point of actually setting up the new school, developing the curriculum. And it's the whole ethos of the fact that we need the hospitality skills and knowledge that the industry want to then to be able to embed into the curriculum. So the whole philosophy behind the school is about it being completely industry centric, industry led, and being co-delivered with industry. So those partnerships have been key, and completely on side with Regina. It's not about being partners and trying to communicate with the world, shall we say, and every part of the industry out there. There are some key people and key parts of the industry, and some key companies and businesses within the industry that are involved with the school, and they've been involved from day one. And it's about them building up those relationships. The students then will be building up those relationships with those people as well. And then they've got the opportunity to work with them on various different projects, on their internships and everything else. And then the world can open up from them behind that, if that makes sense. I don't think from an education point of view, we should try to be friends, shall we say, with every part of the industry and every company within it. Because
it just doesn't work. Yeah,
because then you just don't have those solid relationships and those solid partnerships, and that's what we need moving forward to be able to bridge this gap that we've got, and to be able to bridge the divide. Those relationship building is what we need between industry and academia, and it's looking at those key partners and how we communicate and how they're then involved from curriculum, from the first moment those students step foot inside our campuses to the moment they graduate and then beyond.
Yep, and you're absolutely right. It's interesting to see that now with students coming out from the Edge Hotel School, and one of the things that school, rather like yours, has always tried to do is build this relationship with industry from the very get-go. And what happens there, of course, is that the industry, because they're so engaged with it, they know what the students are doing. They actually can make an offer to the student that there's a mutual respect between the two parties. And it would do Regina out of a job, quite frankly, because of what they're doing, of course, is that they're in a position of making offers in recruiting individuals because they've got such a close relationship. And so both parties know exactly what they're getting themselves into. And that's really quite powerful. I'm afraid, guys, we've run out of time, which we could have gone on probably for at least another hour, but we have indeed run out of time. So could I just ask you very, very quickly, and I'm going to start with Stuart, what one takeaway, try and make it as short as possible, Stuart, what's your takeaway, or what would be the takeaway for the people that are participating in today's webinar that's actually going to improve things? What would you be saying to both parties, really?
For the best outcome for all stakeholders, focus on year one of the curriculum so that we give our students confidence in engaging with work in the industry. We rebuild the trust of industry that we can actually produce employable future professionals. And it's also the beginning of this solid relationship that we're just talking about that sustains us into the future. The first year curriculum is key, and I would focus there.
Yep, good, thank you. Mohammed Kumar, your takeaway.
Thank you. So when I passed out from the college and then, went on to work in this glamorous Taj Mahal Hotel, Mumbai, as you know, one of the best hotels in the world, I wanted to show off, go back to the college as an examiner, and, generally be looked upon as a role model. But there was no organized platform for me to address and give back to the students what I learned in those first 2-3 years. What is it that I didn't learn in the college? And what is it that I learned in the first 3 years to survive? So advisory council is fine, but as in this, one of the takeaways that I'm just like to share is that, generally colleges tend to call in well-known, seasoned GMs and leaders of the industry. That's fine as advisors, but what you really need to do is call in the fresh young GMs, young leadership who have just joined the industry. They are the ones who will relate to your students because they've been in the college. They identify with these young professionals in the industry, and there will be a lot of commonality in their dialogue. So that would be one of my things, that every college must identify their bright students, those who are in different industries, and create a forum called interactive, sessions.
Okay. Yeah, that's very good. So again, it's about role models that they can recognize. Yeah. Gavin, what's your takeaway for today?
I'll be a little bit different. What the hotel school business needs to do is market a module to us hoteliers, and every time we're going to promote somebody in middle management or positions of responsibility, they have to pass your 3-month course.
Okay. Right. Okay.
That's another source of income for your business, Peter.
Yeah, you could
Professional
be right.
Development Lab, ICMS. We've got it. Thank you.
All right. Stop the advertising. Stop it. Stop it. Rainer.
I will say that stop to focus to be the best GM from moment zero and focus on learning from the base. Integrate the basics and then become the best GM.
Right.
But and don't pretend to be the best one just when you finish your degree, because you need to understand the basics in the industry.
Yeah. And Lisa, finally.
For me, there is two things. I think that development of partnerships is really important, and whether that's with industry and also then with our alumni afterwards, to be able to encourage them to come back. But also I have a bit of a plea that please can we have our academic institutions to be more agile and to be able to allow us, or to enable the changes that are needed in a speedier way, so that we can actually update curriculum, we can bring in innovative modules and everything else that reflect the industry and what is actually needed. So a little bit of plea at the end for academic colleagues and academic institutions.
Yeah, no, I certainly support that, I can assure you. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end. Can I just give you a foretaste of that which is still to come? We're doing another webinar on the 3rd of April, which will be during the EUHOFA Congress, which is about looking at alternative models of hospitality education, and will be a live stream event. So it will be coming to you live from the EUHOFA Congress, which will be on the 3rd of April. Can I ask you, please, I know that you're all there somewhere, if you could give thanks to our panel today, Stuart Wiggins, Mahat Kumar, Gavin Fall, despite what it says on his name underneath it, Regina and Lisa. Very fascinating conversations. I'm sorry that we couldn't go on for longer. I'm sure we could have easily gone on for an awful lot longer. But the ideas, the discussion, the conversation, we've touched on so many issues that really this survey has started to unpack. And I think they're all extremely relevant for both industry and education. And we do need to do something. And the very first thing has got to be understanding each other and understanding how best we can communicate with each other. Because between us, we can make a difference. On our own, I think we're still siloed. And that would be a big problem. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all for your commentary on the chat. This is being recorded, and there will be a summary which will include elements of the chat, which will be made available on YouTube when I get round to editing out the bits that I didn't like. All right, which is mostly me. Okay, thank you, and thank you all.
Thank you
to the panel members. You've been brilliant, and thank you very much for giving up your time. Nice to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks a lot, Peter.
Thank you. Bye-bye.